Amnesty is something we cannot allow. Obama did it. Bush 41 did it. Even Reagan did it. Congressman Eric Burlison is on deck to discuss. We'll also check in on TikTok. Is a ban still the only option, or does President Trump have something else planned? All eyes are on New York City as Eric Adams battles Silver Spoon socialist Zohran Mamdani for the soul of the city. We've got two New Yorkers to unpack the brawl, plus AI deepfakes are twisting the truth like a pretzel. We've got AI expert Larry Ward here to decode the risks. It's all next on the Matt Gaetz Show. Let's do this. We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
When we began this program, we promised to expose the corrupt deals of Washington, D.C. There are two archetypes of those deals I want to discuss tonight. The first arose during the Obama presidency. It was the deal that tied government funding to our military, to non-defense discretionary spending. And that's where you get a lot of the pork and the waste. Part of me wonders if this was why Obama was so willing to keep America in a losing war in Afghanistan for so long. He knew that the congressional defense hawks on the Republican side would never abandon troops in conflict. Thus, he got massive spending authorities on the domestic side so long as he was tying it to military spending. Trump broke this corrupt deal in his first term. He rescued our military from the Obama years of sequestration and neglect. He got our military the funding they needed, and he still pursued changes to health care that would have saved the Medicaid program. But alas, John McCain put personal animus over the responsible policy choice and even his own campaign promises on the matter. John McCain gave us a lot of the debt we're saddled with now with his vote against Graham Cassidy. President Trump should always be appreciated for ending this corrupt deal that was harmful to our national defense. But there's another corrupt deal that has existed in D.C. for my entire life. It's over immigration. Anytime an immigration bill has been conducted, a trade goes on like this: immigration enforcement in exchange for some form of amnesty. President Reagan did this deal. We got the amnesty. That's probably why previously red California turned deep blue. The enforcement, it never really came. President George W. Bush also sought this trade. Few wars got in the way. Obama always wanted comprehensive immigration reform. That was his corrupt lexicon for that very type of deal. The Gang of Eight undertook this approach. Jeb Bush even tried to sell us on an act of love. That didn't end well for him.
Jeb said when they come across the southern border, they come as an act of love.
You said in September 30th that ISIS was not a
Am I
not
talking or are you talking, Jeb?
I'm talking right now. I'm talking.
You can go back. You're not talking. You interrupted me,
September 30th,
Jeb. Are you going to
you said
apologize, Jeb? No. When Jeb comes out and he talks about the border, and I saw it, and I was witness to it, and so was everyone else, and I was standing there, they come across as an act of love. He's saying the same thing right now with radical Islam, and we can't have that in our country. It just won't work. We need strength.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength.
It was all a disaster. For whatever quibbles people may have had with elements of President Trump's budget bill, it is the first bill to do just immigration enforcement with no amnesty. So it would be the dumbest thing. It would surrender the ground that President Trump won for all of us, for the United States Senate to now pass an amnesty bill of any kind. There are two ways for President Trump to secure a midterm victory for his party. One, deliver the Trump economy, and that is happening before our eyes. The second way is to keep up the deportations, double down, enhance the operational speed. That was the promise of this bill, and President Trump has an incredible team to deliver it. I've talked with House conservative sources today, and a lot of them didn't love the spending levels in the budget bill. They've told me they are digging in against any amnesty coming from the United States Senate. And joining us now is one of those House conservatives who voted for President Trump's signature legislation, but still is concerned about federal spending, Missouri Republican Congressman Eric Burlison. So, Congressman Burlison, I keep hearing that the Senate is trying to cook up some version of an amnesty bill and send it over to the House. Are you hearing the same thing?
I've not been hearing that, but look, that, just to use a colloquialism from my area, that just ain't going to fly. That is not going to fly. there are a significant number of members like myself that campaign to try to fix the border, not to provide amnesty. And so, look, the first thing that if somebody is coming across to the United States should be doing is following the rule of law. We're the party of the rule of law. And so, look, if we want to, talk about how we can allow people to lawfully immigrate here, that's a different conversation. But giving amnesty to people who are violating the law is just, it's not something that I'm going to support whatsoever.
You come from a state that has a lot of agriculture, a lot of meat processing. There are some who make the argument that for American agriculture to survive, there has to be some flavor of amnesty for farm workers or meat packers. Do you agree with that?
I actually think that there's enough workforce that we can meet the needs. We just need to, kick people out of the nest who are feathering their nest and living off of the government dime. There's a lot of people, there's 4.7 million people, adult men, have checked out of the labor force in the United States. That would go a long ways if we would just stop, encouraging them to stay home, be on Medicaid, be on TANF, be on SNAP. I think at the end of the day, let's start there, and then let's see where a shortfall exists. If it does, maybe technology can fill some of that gap. Robotics, we're hearing a lot about, the advent of AI and robotics, how that might be able to revolutionize farming as well. So let's deal with those issues before we start talking about amnesty.
We are seeing the administration enhance their immigration enforcement efforts within the country. We've seen the clashes in Southern California. Your colleague Eric Swalwell referred to a park that many know as a drug den, a gang hangout, as like a place of picnics and community gatherings. What do you think Democrats are missing about the immigration enforcement agenda that we see kicking into overdrive now?
Yeah, I think that their attacks on law enforcement is really feeding into why they lost the previous elections, because people were not going to tolerate them defunding the police or defunding law enforcement, and their attacks on law enforcement. Well, I think that they're fighting a battle from the 1960s. They're still fighting the civil rights movement. This is not the civil rights movement. The American people understand this is about the rule of law. They understand that their communities have been impacted by these individuals. They're sick and tired of paying taxes to fund other people's lifestyles. This is not the same issue. And I think that, if the Democratic Party wants to continue to double down on this, they'll continue to lose.
What are they going to be campaigning on? Because I look at the anti-ICE campaign, and that is, I think you've correctly assessed that boomerangs on them. Do you think they end up running on Medicaid? And if so, I mean, you've been at the tip of the spear on the work requirement issue. It seems you would welcome the 2026 midterms to be a question about whether or not able-bodied people on Medicaid can go to work. But are they trying to make it about any other major question?
Yeah, I don't know if they've really got a central theme of what they're talking about. I think that they're kind of lost in the wilderness right now, and that's fine. I think our message to the American people is that, look, the Trump's one big beautiful bill was a bill for the middle class. It was absolutely focused on and tailored to lifting up and encouraging a larger middle class workforce in the United States. And once people start living under that, and they start seeing their taxes lowered, and they start seeing job opportunities in abundance, I think that the American people are going to respond well.
So as Congress returns, you're going to go about the business of taking up some of these individual appropriations bills. Pardon me for thinking that's a little performative and thinking you're on your way to a continuing resolution. Either way. Yeah, I know. You're a truth teller. You're not part of the grift there. But in that process, there are going to be some key votes. For example, there'll be a vote on the defense appropriations bill on the extent of the funding for Ukraine. Where do you think a majority of Republicans in Congress are on the question of whether or not we should continue to fund the war between Russia and Ukraine?
You've served with me along with a lot of the same members. I would say, and I'd love to hear your input, but I think that probably the majority, probably a slim majority of the Republican Party would support that.
Wow.
There's been some of us. I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise to you. You serve with these people. There's a lot of our conference that loves wars and they love funding wars, but I think that there's a strong contingent that will fight that.
There was also a key series of votes where Eli Crane and you and I worked to try to get the bloated budget out of USAID. Now, President Trump and Secretary Rubio seem to be administratively winding down USAID. But do you think there'll be votes on that in the Congress? And do you think the Republicans will support defunding it now that we've learned about some of its successes?
Yeah, we did in the rescission package. Hopefully the Senate will take that up. At least we addressed some of it. And I would hope that when we get to the appropriation process, even if it ends up becoming some big omnibus bill at the end of the year, I would hope that leadership is going to incorporate as many, if not all, of the DOGE effort as possible into that. Look, and the fact that the Democrats are posturing that they are adamant that they're not going to help Republicans in a CR or an omnibus bill, in a funding bill, that's good for conservatives. That's good for fiscal hawks because we can make the conference come to us. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen.
Well, let's hope so. Congressman Eric Burlison, Republican from Missouri, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective.
Anytime, Matt.